At 14:30 on a spring afternoon in 1943, Stella Goldschlag walked into a café on the Kurfürstendamm, Berlin's most elegant boulevard. She was 21 years old, blonde, beautiful, and wearing a yellow star on her coat. She scanned the room with practiced eyes. In the corner, a man sat alone, reading a newspaper. He looked nervous. He kept glancing at the door. His coffee had gone cold. Stella recognized him. His name was Manfred Kübler. She had known him from the Jewish community before the deportations began. He was supposed to be in Auschwitz by now. Instead, he was here, hiding in plain sight, living under a false identity, hoping to survive. She smiled and walked toward him. "Manfred," she said softly, "it's been so long." His face went pale. He knew what she had become. Everyone in the underground knew. Stella Goldschlag, the most beautiful Jewish woman in Berlin, had become a catcher, a Greiferin, a Jew who hunted Jews for the Gestapo. "Please," he whispered, "Stella, please." She sat down across from him. For a moment something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, perhaps, or memory of who she had once been. Then she raised her hand. 2 Gestapo agents appeared at the door. Manfred Kübler was arrested, deported, and murdered at Auschwitz. Stella Goldschlag ordered another coffee and waited for her next target. She would betray hundreds more before the war ended. She would become the most hated Jew in Berlin. And she would live with what she had done for another 50 years. The transformation had begun 3 months earlier in a basement torture chamber on Burgstrasse. In February 1943, Stella Goldschlag was arrested during the Factory Action, the final roundup of Berlin's remaining Jews. She had been living illegally, working in a munitions factory under a false identity. Someone had betrayed her. The Gestapo interrogators knew immediately that they had caught something valuable. Stella was not just any Jew. She was young, beautiful, blonde, and spoke perfect German without an accent. She looked like a poster girl for the Nazi ideal, which made her perfect for hunting those who looked the same. For 3 weeks, they tortured her. They beat her. They threatened to deport her parents, who were already in custody, immediately to Auschwitz. "Your mother and father will die in the gas chamber tomorrow," an interrogator told her, "unless you help us." Help us? That phrase would define Stella's choice and her damnation. SS Hauptsturmführer Walter Doberke, who ran the Jewish collection camp at the former Jewish old-age home on Große Hamburger Straße, made her an offer. "Work for us. Use your beauty and your connections to find hidden Jews. In return, your parents will live. You will live." Stella said yes. She would later claim she had no choice. Her critics would say there is always a choice, and that thousands of Jews chose death over betrayal. The debate has never ended. It never will. To understand Stella Goldschlag, you must first understand what Berlin had become by 1943. Before the war, Berlin had been home to approximately 160,000 Jews, the largest Jewish community in Germany. By February 1943, that number had been reduced to fewer than 10,000. The rest had emigrated, been deported, or died. Those who remained were the U-boats, Jews living illegally underground, hidden in attics and basements, surviving on forged papers and the mercy of non-Jewish Germans who risked their lives to help them. They moved constantly. They trusted no one. They knew that capture meant death. The Gestapo had a problem. These hidden Jews were difficult to find. They had shed their identities, changed their appearances, blended into the anonymous masses of wartime Berlin. German police could not easily distinguish them from ordinary citizens, but other Jews could. The Gestapo recruited a network of Jewish catchers, Greifer, to hunt their own people. These collaborators knew the community. They recognized faces. They understood how hidden Jews thought and where they might hide, and they had a powerful motivation: their own survival. The catchers were given extraordinary privileges. They received food rations, apartments, money. Their families were protected, at least temporarily, from deportation. They lived in a twilight zone between victim and perpetrator, buying their lives with the lives of others. Stella Goldschlag was not the only catcher in Berlin. There were perhaps 20 to 30 operating at the height of the program. But she was the most effective and the most notorious. Her beauty was her weapon. She could approach men in cafes and on streets without arousing suspicion. She could flirt, charm, and seduce information out of people. She moved through Berlin's underground like a ghost, appearing where hidden Jews gathered, smiling, friendly, deadly. She was the angel of death, one survivor recalled, and she was beautiful. The Gestapo gave her quotas. Some accounts suggest she was expected to deliver 10 Jews per week. If she failed, her parents would die. If she succeeded, she would live another week. It was a devil's bargain. Stella accepted it completely. Stella Goldschlag had not always been destined for darkness. Born in 1922 in Berlin, she grew up in a middle-class Jewish family. Her father, Gerhard, was a musician who had fought for Germany in World War I. Her mother, Toni, was a homemaker. They were assimilated Jews, more German than Jewish in their daily lives. Stella was a golden child. Blonde, blue-eyed, and strikingly beautiful, she looked nothing like the Nazi caricature of a Jew. She dreamed of becoming a fashion designer or a singer. She studied at the Feige Strasberger Fashion School, one of the few institutions that still accepted Jews in the late 1930s. The persecution came gradually, then all at once. The Nuremberg laws stripped her family of citizenship. Kristallnacht destroyed Jewish businesses and synagogues. By 1941, Jews were required to wear the yellow star. By 1942, the deportations to the east had begun. Stella's family tried to emigrate. They applied for visas to America, to Shanghai, to anywhere that would take them. Every application was rejected or delayed. The doors were closing. In 1942, as the deportations accelerated, Stella made her first fateful decision. She would go underground. She obtained forged identity papers. She removed her yellow star. She became Stella Kübler, an ordinary German woman. For almost a year she survived. She worked in a factory. She moved from apartment to apartment. She trusted almost no one. Then, in February 1943, her luck ran out. The Gestapo arrested her along with her parents. In the basement of their headquarters, they showed her what happened to Jews who resisted. They showed her the train schedules to Auschwitz. They showed her the photographs of the camps. "You have a choice," they told her. "Work for us or die with your parents." Stella chose to live. It was, she would say later, the only choice she could make. Her parents were deported anyway, despite Gestapo promises. They died at Auschwitz. Stella learned of their deaths months later. By then she had already betrayed dozens of people. She kept working. She had nothing left to lose except her own life. The transformation from victim to perpetrator was not instantaneous. It happened in stages. At first, Stella told herself she was only giving names, information the Gestapo already had, people who were probably doomed anyway. She was not pulling triggers or operating gas chambers. She was just surviving. Then the Gestapo asked for more. They wanted her to actively hunt, to walk the streets, visit cafes, attend underground gatherings, and identify hidden Jews in person. To befriend them, gain their trust, and deliver them to death. The first time she did this, the first time she looked a former friend in the eye and raised her hand for the Gestapo, something broke inside her, or perhaps something was unleashed. Survivors would later describe a change in Stella. The frightened girl who had been tortured in the basement of Burgstrasse became something else: cold, calculating, efficient. She no longer seemed to hesitate. She no longer seemed to feel. She enjoyed it. One survivor testified. You could see it in her eyes. She had power over life and death, and she liked it. Whether this was true, whether Stella genuinely enjoyed her work or simply numbed herself to survive, remains debated. What is certain is that she became extraordinarily good at it. Over the next 2 years, Stella Goldschlag would betray an estimated 600 to 3,000 Jews. The exact number will never be known. Many of her victims left no records. They simply vanished. While Stella hunted Jews on the streets of Berlin, the war was turning against Germany. In February 1943, the same month Stella was arrested, the German Sixth Army surrendered at Stalingrad. In July, the Allies invaded Sicily. By 1944, it was clear to anyone paying attention that Germany would lose. The Gestapo accelerated their work. The deportations intensified. The catchers were pushed harder. Time was running out to complete the final solution. Stella adapted to the changing circumstances. She married twice during the war years. Her first husband, Manfred Kübler, was the same man she had once betrayed in a café. In a twist that defied comprehension, he had survived Auschwitz and returned to Berlin, where he reconnected with Stella. They married in 1944. He knew what she had done. He married her anyway. Some historians believe Kübler was also working as a catcher by then. Others suggest he was simply trapped in a relationship with a woman who had saved him from death and might deliver him back to it. Meanwhile, Stella's reputation in the Jewish underground had become legendary. Hidden Jews passed around her description: blonde, beautiful, speaks perfect German, extremely dangerous. They warned each other to flee if they saw her approaching. "Stella is coming" became a phrase of terror in the underground. It meant run. It meant hide. It meant someone was about to die. Not all of Stella's targets were strangers. She betrayed former classmates, former friends, people who had trusted her before the war. She walked into their hiding places, smiled, and delivered them to the Gestapo. One survivor, Inge Deutschkron, later described an encounter. "I saw her on the street. She was walking toward me, smiling. I turned and ran. I knew what that smile meant. I ran until I couldn't breathe." She was the most terrifying thing in Berlin. Not the bombs, not the Gestapo, but Stella. As the war entered its final months, the Gestapo began destroying records and eliminating witnesses. Many catchers were quietly disposed of. They knew too much. Stella survived, perhaps because of her connections, perhaps because of her usefulness, perhaps simply because of luck. When the Red Army entered Berlin in April 1945, Stella was still alive. She was arrested by Soviet forces and held for questioning. Her war was over. Her reckoning was about to begin. Stella Goldschlag faced justice twice, and neither trial satisfied anyone. In 1946, a Soviet military tribunal in Berlin sentenced her to 10 years in a labor camp for crimes against the German people. The trial was quick, the evidence limited. Stella served her sentence and was released in 1956. She returned to West Berlin, where she lived quietly under her married name, Stella Kübler. She remarried, she worked. She tried to disappear into post-war German society, but the survivors had not forgotten. In 1957, a West German court tried her again, this time for specific acts of betrayal documented by survivors. The trial was a sensation. Witnesses testified about Stella's methods, her cruelty, her apparent enjoyment of her work. The most damning testimony came from those who had known her before the war. They described a transformation from a frightened girl to a cold-blooded predator. They described how she had betrayed friends, acquaintances, even people who had helped her hide. Stella defended herself with the same argument she had used in 1946. She had no choice. The Gestapo had threatened her parents. She was a victim, not a perpetrator. The court was not convinced, but they also recognized the impossible situation she had faced. The sentence was 10 years, served concurrently with her Soviet sentence, meaning she would not return to prison. Stella walked free. The survivors were outraged. They believed she had escaped justice twice. In the decades that followed, Stella lived in various places, always moving when her past caught up with her. She converted to Christianity. She married several more times. She gave occasional interviews in which she alternated between remorse and defiance. "I did what I had to do to survive," she said in one interview. "Anyone in my position would have done the same." Many disagreed. Thousands of Jews had faced the same choice and chosen death over betrayal. They had gone to the gas chambers rather than condemn others. Stella had not. The question that haunted everyone who studied her case: was she a monster, or was she simply human, a woman broken by torture and terror who made an impossible choice and lived with the consequences? There was no easy answer. There never would be. In her final decades, Stella Kübler seemed to understand, at last, with the magnitude of what she had done. According to those who knew her, she was plagued by nightmares. She spoke of seeing faces, the faces of people she had betrayed. She drank heavily. She isolated herself from others. In interviews, she oscillated between justification and confession. One moment she would insist she had no choice. The next, she would admit that she had done terrible things, things she could not forgive herself for. "I was a victim who became a perpetrator," she told one journalist. "I don't expect anyone to understand. I don't understand it myself." Whether this was genuine remorse or simply the self-pity of someone caught and punished, no one can know. What is certain is that Stella never found peace. The girl who had dreamed of becoming a fashion designer, who had been beautiful and talented and full of hope, had become something else entirely, a symbol of the impossible moral choices that the Holocaust forced upon its victims. She lived with that knowledge for 50 years. It was not enough punishment for her victims. It was perhaps a kind of hell all its own. On October 13th, 1994, Stella Kübler jumped from the window of her apartment in Freiburg, Germany. She was 72 years old. Some called it justice finally served. Others called it the final act of a woman who could no longer live with herself. Still others saw it as an escape, a way to avoid the judgment she truly deserved. No suicide note was found. No final explanation. Stella took her secrets, including the true number of her victims, to her grave. Her story became the subject of books, documentaries, and academic studies. Peter Weiden's biography, Stella, One Woman's True Tale of Evil, Betrayal, and Survival in Hitler's Germany, brought her story to an international audience in 1992. The debates continue to this day. Was Stella a victim or a monster? Was she a survivor or a collaborator? Could anyone judge her who had not faced the same impossible choice? The only certain answer: the people she betrayed never had a chance to judge anyone. They died in gas chambers, their names forgotten, their stories untold. Stella lived. They did not. That was the arithmetic of her survival. History has struggled to categorize Stella Kübler. She was not an SS officer. She was not a concentration camp guard. She was a victim of Nazi persecution who, under extreme duress, became a perpetrator. She occupied a moral gray zone that defies simple judgment. The Holocaust created many such figures: Jews who served on Jewish councils, who worked in Sonderkommandos, who policed ghettos, who collaborated to survive. Their stories complicate the narrative of victims and perpetrators. Stella was perhaps the most extreme example. She did not merely comply, she excelled. She did not merely survive, she hunted. Her story is not a lesson in evil, it is a lesson in what happens when humanity is pushed beyond all limits. Today, Stella Kübler's story is taught in Holocaust education courses around the world, not as an excuse for collaboration, but as a warning. Totalitarian systems do not merely kill their victims, they corrupt them. They force impossible choices. They create moral catastrophes that echo across generations. But the lesson of Stella Kübler endures. I had no choice. That was her defense. Thousands of others faced the same choice and chose death. Who can judge? Those who were not there cannot know what they would have done. Those who were there are mostly gone. Some choices cannot be judged, only witnessed, remembered, and mourned. If you found this story as compelling as we did, please take a moment to like this video. It helps us share more forgotten stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to stay connected with these untold histories. Each one matters. Each one deserves to be remembered. Leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Our community spans from Berlin to Boston, from survivors to students. You are part of something special here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for keeping these stories alive.